Welcome back to Agranak Studios. I'm your host, DM Wisdom. Today, I've got a very special guest, James M. Spahn, the man, the myth, the legend. How you doing? You're back
Again,
again.
yeah, back again. Every time I get a big book coming out, I end up here. But yeah, I'm doing great, man. I'm doing great.
Right on. Well, for those people that don't know your work, don't know you, may not know who you are, how did you become one of the most recognized names in RPG design? How did that happen?
That comes from asking. Um,
Oh,
I've freelanced on like so many things. I've freelanced on official RPGs for Star Wars, Star Trek, Lord of the Rings, Adventures in Middle Earth, the One Ring First and Second Edition, Shadowrun Sixth World, Shadowrun Anarchy, Legend of the Five Rings, Zorro, Dungeon Crawl Classics Dying Earth, X Crawl Classics, the My Little Pony Friendship is Role Playing Game RPG. I
yes.
mean, Swords and Wizardry Complete, just tons and tons of stuff. And most
Wow.
of the time, I got those jobs by asking, "Hey, are you looking for work? Are you looking to hire people?" And if they said
Wow.
no, okay. And if they said yes,
Yeah.
just went to that. On top of that, I run Barrel Rider Games, which is my own independent press, most well known for, as we talked about last time, my white box line of products, which is anchored by White Box Cyclopedia, which is everything you could ever want from 74 era D&D. Retroclone in a 300-page tome that includes everything from 30 races or 15 races, 30 classes, chivalry, psychic rules, extra monsters, domain play, yada yada. It was just everything in the world.
So you've worked on all these games.
Mm-hmm.
Uh the One Ring, Old School Essentials, Swords and Wizardry, blah blah blah. You just name them all. What thread connects all of those projects for you as a designer?
I think they're all cool, and I want to be a part of them.
Okay, here's a question. We're gonna get into like this is kind of the meat. We're here to really push and kind of promote not only you and everything that you've been involved with, but your current Kickstarter, which is for a game called Blades of Power. Now we're gonna get into that. The more questions we have here, but before we do, I know this is kind of backwards, and maybe I'll put this question later. I don't know. But if I handed 10-year-old James a copy of Blades of Power, what would he think?
10-year-old James would look through the book and would immediately glom onto the art. All of the interior art is full color, and it's all by Rick Hershey. And he's got this amazing full color art throughout the whole book. And then I would go and grab my action figures and be like, doing that. And then I would come back later and read the rules. But I would probably spend 2 or 3 hours flipping through the book just looking at the art.
The second I saw Blades of Power, um, and you've given me the text version of it, so I've been able to peruse through it. But just the idea when I started seeing all the art and then the Kickstarter, and when you were like kind of ramping up for all that, I immediately thought of He-Man, of course, Thundar, Thundercats, and all those wonderful Saturday morning cartoons and weekday cartoons. I mean, they were everywhere, depending on what time zone you were. And then, what were the biggest influences that directly shaped this game?
I mean, you named them right there. I was a Masters of the Universe kid before I was into D&D, before any of that. In fact, part of what inspired Blades was when I finally sat down to read D&D. I loved it. Don't get me wrong. I was obviously, 40 years later, I'm still in it. But I was slightly bit disappointed that wasn't more like Masters. One of my earliest core childhood memories was coming home from kindergarten when I was 6 years old, and it was my birthday. And my mom said to me, your birthday present is at home. I'm sorry we couldn't wrap it. It's too big. And I was like, too big. And it was
Awesome.
Pixel Grayskull. And to this
Yes.
day, I can remember walking in my bedroom and seeing it sitting there by the windowsill. Like that is one of my formative memories. I was
Yeah.
hard to believe now. I was an
Yeah.
underweight, sickly kid who wasn't allowed to go out and play for health reasons. So
Hmm.
the whole muscle bound, I have the power, I have the ability to do the thing really resonated with me as a kid. And I
Hmm.
really glommed onto that. And that, along with Star Wars, were probably my two biggest influences as a kid. I remember watching tons of Masters and watching Star Wars over and over and over again on Betamax.
So, what do you think those old cartoons understood about fantasy that modern fantasy sometimes forgets?
For me, it is, I mean, it's right there in the tagline. For kids, it's empowerment. I have the power. You might feel like the weak, bumbling Prince Adam or the young Lion-O who's, everybody thinks is, not really good at what he does and, doesn't have the skills or experience. But, the kids, at least when I was a kid, give me a chance. Give me a chance to prove my mettle, to prove my worth, to go out there to fight the dragon. It's not
Yeah.
that they're whether or not they're able is predicated on whether or not you let them try. You
Hmm.
have to let the kids go out and try, and sometimes they will fail, and that's
Yeah.
okay too. Because the best part of getting knocked down is you learn how to get back up again.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
I learned a lot of those lessons from those cartoons as a kid.
Was there a specific moment where you consciously said something to the effect of, I'm making the game that feels like the fantasy cartoons I grew up watching?
Yes, yes. It started out. Blades of Power wasn't even originally the name. Um, until late in production, it had a different name.
Okay.
It originally started out as a straight BX clone because OSE stopped. They said they're going to stop doing their basic rule set, and I
Hmm.
wanted there to be a BX based rule set in print. So I thought,
Right.
well, I'll make one. Okay,
Hmm.
there's not one out there, then I'll make one. And my brain just doesn't work that way.
Hmm.
Like, I'm not going to make a BX set. I'm going to make my BX set, the one I would have wanted at 8 years old. So and I said, well, what would I have wanted at 8 years old? I would have wanted Saturday morning cartoons. I would have wanted Thundar and
Yeah.
Thundercats and Masters. So
Yeah.
I started going in and consciously leaning into that science fantasy vibe
Hmm.
and tweaking things, always with a mind of keeping it BX compatible. Without, like, you could drop keep on the Borderlands in this game with no modification.
In Blades of Power, you've got dragons and sorcery, neon magic, weird science, over the top heroes. I mean, they can still die, but um, what does that blend of fantasy and science fantasy? Why does it work so well? Why is it like it's just awesome? I don't know why. It's just awesome. Why do you think?
You just answered your question because it runs on rule of cool. Man,
Yeah.
that's cool.
Yeah.
And if something is cool enough, you don't stop and think about it. You just run with it.
Right.
One of the things to really reinforce rule of cool and this whole archetypical kind of character creation in characters, class thing was you don't write a backstory for your character. I'm very much an OSR guy in that your backstory doesn't you can have a 2 sentence backstory and we're done. But
Right.
how much do you know about somebody when you hear a song you associate with them? You know everything
Mm.
about somebody from one song. Like you say, that's my song, and that tells you so much about the person. In Blades of Power, you pick a theme song. There's not a list. You just pick one. Okay, my character's theme song is Rainbow in the Dark, and my character's theme song is Blind Guardians, Mirror Mirror, or
Yeah.
whatever. It could be anything. It could
Yeah.
be Billy Joel's Piano Man for all I know. But that's going to tell you and your GM something about what that character is, and it's something you can look back on really quick. And the
Yeah.
rule for picking your theme song was picture your character doing something awesome and badass. What song
Mm.
is playing in the background?
The foreword by Brendan J. LaSalle describes the game as vintage fantasy. What does that phrase mean to you?
We talked about that because that phrase particularly. First of all, let me give a shout out to Brendan. Brendan is one of the coolest people in the world. I regard him
Nice.
as a deep personal friend, and he's one of my professional heroes. He wrote one of the coolest role playing games ever, X Crawl, which has become X Crawl Classics. And it
Yeah.
was a dream of mine in the early 2000s when this game showed up to one day get to write X Crawl material. So
Oh, awesome.
I've
Yeah.
gotten to write two X-Crawl adventures since then and an article. So, dream fulfilled. Brendan is an amazing guy. The reason we
Yeah.
chose the term vintage fantasy over OSR is because while the game has procedures, the procedures aren't the point of the game. You can
Ah,
play it as tracking your rations, tracking your torches, tracking your gear, but you
right.
don't have to. So
Mm-hmm.
vintage fantasy was a term. This is a BX based game. If you read this, you will see BX. I mean, it is a BX chassis through and through. But
Yeah.
it's not necessarily an OSR game, but it can be played that way.
What part of Blades of Power do you think people will underestimate until they actually get it to the table?
I think people are going to underestimate the boss timer and the hero tokens,
Okay.
because they don't. The hero token system doesn't just sit statically.
Mm-hmm.
You start with one token in the pool at the beginning of every session. Every time somebody rolls a one, you add a token. Every time somebody rolls a 20, you remove a token. So it keeps them
Mm,
from just piling up because, oh, if I
right.
roll a
That's
20,
good.
then I lose one. So it becomes this
Yeah.
constantly flowing currency. And the things you can do with it, flourishing, last stands, other stuff in there too. I think we'll keep that. It'll be much more dynamic than the traditional, 5e inspiration point.
If nostalgia gets people in the door, what do you hope keeps people playing Blades of Power 5 years from now?
I I am so unabashedly enthusiastic about what I love.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that so many gamers they're just afraid to like put it all out there. And I'm so not. I have no shame about anything ever.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
and I want this game to keep people enthusiastic. I want them to flip through and be like, oh man, if I do this, this, and this, wouldn't it be cool if we had a campaign where the players get, attacked by the Draconis Maximus and launched through time and discover they're in a future where their alternate selves did this, that, and that. One of the effects of epic wizardry is you can accidentally rip a hole in space time and your evil clone comes through.
Oh,
Things like
yes.
that, or an alternate version of your PC. So
Mm-hmm.
the DM now has a
Oh,
you.
that's awesome.
Stuff
I
like that.
love that.
So you'll appreciate this then. One
It's
of the
good.
effects. So the Draconis Maximus is like my big favorite monster in the whole book.
Yeah.
If you okay, first of all, there's a 5% chance any dinosaur you encounter shoots lasers from its eyes or mouth. Um, Second of all, there is a 1% chance that when you encounter a Pegasus, it's actually an alicorn. And if you are lawful when you climb astride the alicorn, it literally shoots rainbows behind it. And it is the only creature feared by the Draconis Maximus. And you get all these bonuses if you're fighting it while astride a rainbow blasting, unicorn with wings. Like that is
Yes.
literally in the game. Like I said,
Oh
I have
my
no shame.
gosh.
I have no shame.
It's
It is
so
all in
good.
there. It's out there in 80s
Yeah.
neon color blasted glory
Hmm.
because that's the D&D I imagined before I played D&D.
I'm going to do some rapid fire questions. These are supposed to be like one word answers. So it's okay if you have up to 10, but we're trying to keep it like bam, bam, let's just get at it. So you can only keep one: He Man, Thundercats, G.I. Joe, or Transformers.
Oh, He-Man.
You're trapped in Eternia. Which character do you trust to keep you alive for a year?
Duncan.
All right, it's 1985. You have pizza, a 2 liter of your favorite soda, and a group of friends coming over. What's on TV while you're rolling up characters for Blades of Power?
Ooh, for that specific game, 1985 specifically.
Well, 80s somewhere.
Okay.
we'll just make it
80s
a little bit
somewhere,
easier.
80s somewhere, we're going to have the Dolph Lundgren Masters movie on because I thought that was the coolest thing in the world in 1987.
Okay, nice. What monster from any fantasy cartoon terrified you as a kid?
Oh, that's easy. The Red Bull from The Last Unicorn.
So, last one here. If Mattel called tomorrow and asked you to design the official He-Man RPG, what's the very first thing you'd put in it?
I would do the first page would be an in character letter,
Hmm.
writ or journal letter type entry from either King Grayskull or the Sorceress,
Oh,
mythologizing the
nice.
setting and the importance of the
Yeah.
power and what it means to
Oh.
have the power and use the power.
Ooh, that's smart. That's really smart. Man, this has been cool. So much fun. And, being an 80s kid, I get to go down memory lane.
Oh
And then
yeah,
to
oh
see
yeah.
your passion, um, I think this game is going to be friggin' amazing. And for those of you that are out there, make sure that you get on the Kickstarter. There's going to be a link down below. It's still going on right now. So tell us, James, where are you at? What the Kickstarter's about? What kind of stretch goals are you hoping to get to? Go for it.
The best place to find me is on Substack. I post pretty often there at jamesmspawn.substack.com. I'm on Facebook, but I don't really use it very much. Um, as far as the stretch goals, we've already hit our first stretch goal, which is we're doing an appendix in the back, which is going to be Kickstarter content. The first stretch goal, speaking of 80s nostalgia, are the rules for public service announcements, like you had at the end of He-Man and GI Joe.
Yeah.
And at the end of every adventure, the DM or GM picks a player. It's either the person who has the highest charisma, and if there's a tie, they roll off. And they roll on the D20 public service announcement table, and they get a random public service announcement, which could be like "Stranger danger is real," or "Stop, drop, and
Right.
roll," or "Violence is never the answer." And they have to recap a scene from the session and then show why that lesson is applicable, as if it were a 30-second PSA at the end of a cartoon.
Nice.
That's the first stretch goal that's already been unlocked. That's going to be a free
Okay.
PDF for anybody who backs for a digital or higher.
Nice. Mm-hmm.
For the second stretch goal, and that was for 12,050 or 12,500 is when we hit that. If we hit 15,000, we're going to be adding another class. The back of the book, it has the traditional 7 BX classes, but already in the game are 7 additional classes that very much lean into that theme. Dinosaur warriors and a
Mm-hmm.
Skeletarian and a goat man and all that kind of stuff is in the back as an optional class. Because if you don't want that, and I don't know why you wouldn't, but some people don't, then it's not forced down your throat.
Oh,
We
cool.
have I'm planning goals for beyond 20,000, but I don't want to announce them until we get closer. Like I said, when I looked before the cast, we were at about 12,600. And the
Mm-hmm.
Kickstarter's got about another, as of the time of this recording, another 3 weeks or so. So
Okay.
it's certainly not
Cool.
outside the realm of possibility. We could blast past those. Backer levels,
Yeah.
uh, $15 for a full color 300-page PDF.
Uh-huh.
$50 for a 300-page hardcover core rulebook. 65 for a full color hardcover core rulebook of 300 pages and a GM screen. So it's 15, 50, and 65 plus shipping. We're doing US shipping only, which I know sucks to our international backers. I'm sorry, but with
Yeah.
tariffs and all that stuff going on, I just can't dig myself into that hole. But we do plan on offering as a print on demand product later so that people can get it
Okay.
through drive through as well as in the print run,
Okay.
just so our international backers aren't left out in the cold.
Yeah. Very good. Awesome. Awesome. Well, like I was saying, link down in the dungeon. And yeah, is there anything that you want to say signing off?
The slogan for the game was always, join the adventure, be a hero, save the day. That's
Yeah.
what it's all about.
Heck yeah. Right on. All right, everyone. Thanks for stopping by Agranak Studios today. We'll see you on the next one. Later.